rise, please, family.
Thank you. You may be seated. Rising colors. Please rise as the colors are marched in.
Turn forward, forward. God's hand, jump. 1 big step back, march. Upwards, turn. Quick, march.
Bugler, O Canada. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, good morning and welcome. On behalf of Doug's family, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here today. Your presence is very important to the Armour family, as each and every one of you have played a vital role in Doug's life and therefore in theirs as well. As we begin, I want to acknowledge those of you watching from computers, tablets, phones via live stream. thank you for your presence is felt with us today. I've spoken with some of you, and I know that if it was possible, the largest of buildings in town would be packed to the gills and then some, with people wanting to pay their respects to a very good man. A son, a brother, a husband, a father, a leader, a friend, a firefighter, a man who in his own unique way touched many, many lives, causing his own wife to say in recent days, "I didn't know he knew so many people." The year 2020 certainly hasn't been kind to our world. Nobody saw or envisioned the radical changes that we've endured in recent months, nor could any of us have imagined being here today. Totally blindsided, never saw it coming. And I'm sure you all have a story, as do I, of where you were and what you were doing and who told you the news that Doug was in for a difficult battle. So he's tough. And again about his life and character. Great guy, solid family man who loved his wife and kids, cared dearly for his mom. I've heard words like respect, leader, determined, quick-witted, good listener, fair, words like that over and over again. So we need to celebrate this man's life. That's what today is all about. To grieve and to mourn, yes, but I think we've all been doing a lot of that. Today we want to remember and to celebrate, to honor, to show respect, to pay tribute, to love and support Doug's family, and to remember a life well lived. So I'm going to ask that you allow me to lead us in prayer, asking for God's help not just for today, but for the tomorrows as well. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you that we do have this time in these difficult COVID days to gather. And this isn't particularly in any way what we want to be doing, but I just ask for your strength and your peace as we go through the events of today. I pray for your comfort for Danica, for Tavis, for Cade, for the rest of the Doug's family. I pray that you would help them each day as they mourn and grieve, as they remember, as they celebrate. I pray that you would give them moments of laughter and joy as they remember Doug. Give us the strength we need for today. And I pray that you would speak to each of us so that we would know what it is you would have us do in the days ahead to honor Doug and to show our respect for him in the things that we would do and say and how we live our lives. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. 23rd Psalm reads as follows: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." We have a number of people here today who are going to share their thoughts, reflections, stories about Doug, the first of which is Doug's longtime friend and fellow firefighter, Boo Sharma, to share Doug's eulogy. Boo, if you would come.
Thank you for being here. Tom Petty said it best. You and I will meet again when we're least expecting it, somewhere, some far off place. I will recognize your face. I won't say goodbye, my friend. For you, I will meet again. Today is a celebration, celebrating an amazing husband, father, son, brother, co-worker. Doug left his mark on the world. I know I can speak for everyone in saying he is truly one of a kind. Witty, funny, devoted, caring, hardworking guy who is a natural-born leader. Doug has a way with people. He gained his respect not only with his words, but with his actions. He embodied and stood behind his principles. I would never ask someone to do something he wouldn't do. Doug's work ethic came naturally. His parents, Robert and Elizabeth Armour, worked hard to bring their two boys, Doug and his older brother, Stuart, to Canada. They made their move in 1973 and immigrated from Scotland to Burnaby, 2 years after Doug was born. After residing in Burnaby for the first 6 months, they decided to move and build their lives in Coquitlam. While happy with their new life in Canada, it was always nice to have a bit of home, and that bit of home came in the yearly visits from family close friends, Isa and George Thompson from Scotland. Growing up in Coquitlam, Doug attended local schools. Our paths first crossed in a couple of classes while attending Centennial Secondary. There are a few things that come to mind: Doug's natural friendly ways, wanting to chat in the cafeteria during a spare block, and him driving into school with his yellow Honda CRX. I have to say, he received some added attention with that car. In 1989, Doug and I graduated among 1,000 other graduates and moved on to start our lives and build our careers. Doug did not waste time and started his first career right out of graduation in the alarm security business. The career lasted 17 years, and while it was a successful business, it was a stepping stone for his path towards his dream as a career firefighter. Like Doug's work, his personal life continued to flourish. In the early 90s, Doug and Danica met, and after 8 years of dating, in June 2000, surrounded by friends and family, Doug married Danica. They got married and decided to move to Maple Ridge, and in 2003 welcomed their first son, Cade. Tavis, Doug and Danica's second son, was born shortly after in 2004. Everyone knows Doug knows that his favorite role is being a dad to his two sons, Cade and Tavis. This wasn't just evident by his words, but it was his actions as well. Regardless how much he worked or how tired he was, he always showed up for the boys. Any school activities, whether it be chaperoning a field trip, going into class to read with the kids, school sports like basketball or track and field, Doug would be there, not only for his boys, but his nieces and nephew, who also went to the same school. At an early age, both boys got involved in sports. Doug would be there, rain or shine, to watch them play soccer. You could put money on the fact that on a rainy day at the field, Doug would have his double-double steep tee in hand. Ball hockey was also a favorite spring sport for him to go watch, even helping to coach on a few occasions. As the boys gotten older over the years, Doug enjoyed being the person they would go to for advice or for guidance, with the exception of math. The boys knew better to steer clear and leave the guidance up to Danica. Once again, our paths would cross in 2003. While I started with the fire department, it was comforting to know I would start my journey with the fire department along my friend Doug, who had started with the Hall in 2001. During his years with the fire department, I saw how dedicated and well-liked he was with all members, from recruits right up to the chiefs. Everyone spoke highly and respected him. These qualities, among others, led him becoming a full-time firefighter in 2007. His drive didn't stop there. Doug continued to grow within the fire department with the loving support of his wife Danica. That support undoubtedly helped him achieve the rank of assistant chief in 2017. In the department, Doug and I would become members of the training division. We worked together in training new recruits at the Hall and Justice Institute. Working beside him was great because I was ever unsure of any certain steps. He would be there to give me the right answer. Doug was a master of his trade. Over the years at the Hall, we would start hanging outside the department. I am forever grateful for these times and gotten the ability to catch up over the years that had passed. During that time, I learned he had become a black belt in Taekwondo in the early 90s. Doug's natural abilities helped him focus on his training. He would train after work at the dojo, which included training new students. It wasn't surprising to find out the owners of the center were so impressed with his involvement, they would like to see him stay on as a full-time capacity. I also learned how active Doug was during his younger years. Him and Danica had participated in dragon boat racing in the 90s, and the couple also trained and completed a half marathon in 1999 together. In true Doug fashion, the half marathon wasn't enough. He knew he could do more, so Doug and his friend Mike trained and competed the Vancouver Marathon in 2000. Not only did Doug complete it, he completed the run in his goal of 4 hours. If Doug wanted to do something, he didn't hold back. He put his best foot forward every day and applied it to everything he did. Like many of you, I have had a chance to build great memories with Doug. We would frequently go to hockey games, concerts, and movies with his boys. As certain movies and concerts came up, I'd reach out and pre-book him to attend an event. Life was so busy, so I would make it easy and tell him I bought his ticket, so there wasn't an option of backing out. During one of the concerts, I remember picking him up from his house. Doug walked out of his garage, handed me the money for the ticket as soon as he got in the car. The bills he handed me were all paper money, and they hadn't been circulated since 2012. As I looked at the money he handed me, he casually put on his seatbelt and said, "Let's go." I sat there giving him a hard time, questioning where this money came from, and if I was even going to be able to spend any of it. Of course, he told me not to worry, it would be fine. We left the concert knowing that if I had problems paying for that $20 beer or the $50 t-shirt, he would be the one charging it to his card. As well as the other activities and events we had time to discuss what was going on in our lives, and Doug would tell me about the trips being planned with the family and how he was looking forward to getting away. While he may have loved the hot getaways with the family like Cabo San Lucas, Las Vegas, or San Diego, he loved just getting away with the boys closer to home, going to a mountain biking at Whistler or riding the slopes in Seymour. As a friend of Doug's, I've always liked the sense of adventure, especially when it came to the time he decided to get his motorcycle license. Of course, if he got his license, me and the guys would also get our license. When I purchased my motorcycle, Doug and I talked about planning a road trip down to California when life wasn't so busy. I've had the pleasure over the years living by Creekside along Doug, Danica, and the boys. While Doug was always busy in the yard making sure it looked beautiful, there was one thing Doug procrastinated on, and that was the Christmas lights. Because you leave the top lights up until June or July, what's the point of taking them down so close to Christmas? Or at least that's how he tried to sell it to Danica. With Doug loving being outside working in his yard, I thought I would take advantage of his open garage, and soon I quickly got Doug on a standing agreement. Whenever I would drive by his house and his garage was open, he would have to offer me a beer. I tried to add the clause that he didn't need to be around for the beer, but that clause was rejected. Most of the times, I was able to get a beer when he was washing the fleet of Hondas in the driveway. On the rare occasion, the Mustang would be present, and he would be delicately attending to detailing of the wash, which meant no beers until she's cleaned and dried. Looking back, there were times where he would have the garage open on Tuesdays, and for me that usually meant a quick honk and I would drive past and go home. As I think about those times, I wish I could go back and enjoy a Coke with you. I feel honored not only to be part of Doug's life, but to be able to talk about his life today. On behalf of the family, I would like to thank all of you for coming together and celebrating Doug today. We will continue to hear from several people who have known Doug over the years, either personally or as a co-worker. Thank you.
One of the privileges that I've had on a couple occasions over the last few weeks has been to get to know Stuart and his family. Stuart is Doug's brother, so I'm going to ask if he would come at this time.
I tried some of that No More Tears shampoo this morning, but it doesn't seem to be working very well. Hello, everyone. I think most of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Stuart Armour, and I'm Doug's older brother. I was going to say big brother, but I would really have to say bigger brother, although Doug was running a very close second the past few years since his move to management and those daily lunch meetings. As Boo mentioned, Doug and I were fortunate that at a very young age, our parents, Robert and Elizabeth, made the decision to sell everything and move to Canada. This was purely to give us a better family life and for us boys to have more opportunities as we grew up. I believe we have made the most of this chance we were given, and Doug's career in the security industry, followed by almost 20 years in the Maple Ridge Fire Department, are a testament to this. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, as we all struggled with Doug suddenly getting sick and the very rapid timeline of the progression of his illness and then his passing, I've spent time with his family, his friends, and his co-workers, and have also learned many new things about my brother. I already knew he was dedicated to his family and his career, but I never realized what an impact he had made on so many people over the past 49 years. His dedication to family, friends, and work did not leave us much time to be brothers. Sure, we spent time together when we could, and also at all the obligatory family functions and outings, but we rarely took the time just to be brothers. We didn't have the type of relationship where we called or texted each other every day, or even every week. But we knew that if we didn't hear from one another, then things were just rolling along. And when Doug called to tell me he was going to the hospital for a procedure, I could tell he was a little bit concerned and that he wanted to know what was going on. I texted him the night before, wishing him the best of luck the next day and to call if he was able. He texted back that he would keep me posted. He said, "It should be about 4 hours or so. We will see if this is the case or what tomorrow morning." If there is something we can all take away from here today, it's the knowledge that every day we have here in this life is precious. Don't wait for time to stand still. It doesn't. Make the time now to do the things you want to do or wished you had done. Some of the things you may not know about Doug was some of his other loves. Number one, his bed. From a very young age, Doug developed a very meaningful relationship with this coveted piece of furniture. As a child, he would often disappear in the evening, even with friends and family visiting, only to be found in his PJs and comfortably off to the land of Nod. As he grew older, he divided this love and also treated the couch with an equal amount of affection. The other was his private home office attached to the master bedroom. This was a quiet tiled space, often used for bathing and other functions, but also doubled as a place to catch up on reading, etc. His dedication to this room also started at a tender young age. On our first family camping trip when we came to Canada, we stopped for the first night of a 2-week trip in Manning Park. And when our dad took Doug to the outhouse, which was the only option when you were camping in a tent trailer, Doug declared that he would just wait till he got back home. Doug and I worked together for over 15 years, many times on the same jobs. We were both young and still living at home, and when we had a bad day at work and wanted nothing more to do with each other, we still had to sit across the dinner table from each other and be nice and tell Mom and Dad how our day had gone, or at least we told them how they would have wanted it to go. Kate and Tavis were telling me the other day that they always had dinner as a family whenever possible. They would wait for Doug to get home from practice or a meeting, or for one of the boys to get home from a sporting event, so they could all sit down and eat as a family. I envy him for that. It shows how important it was to him to share how each other's day had gone. I also know I had to share Doug with a different group of brothers. The bond that firefighters share can be as strong as the blood that Doug and I shared. And I know it's just as hard for many of you to lose this type of brother. I have several close friends and relatives that are also firefighters, and I've witnessed firsthand some of the very, very difficult and trying times that you must face on the job. But just like real brothers, you lean on each other. When times are tough, you help each other and also their families as they work through whatever that situation is. There's been such an outpouring and for that I'm truly grateful. Even the smallest gesture has meant so much and allowed us to focus on the time we had with Doug. Life without Doug will never be quite the same, and it will be a long time before many of us can accept why this terribly unfair tragedy took him from us when he should have had another 49 years to serve as a husband, a father, an uncle, a co-worker, a friend, and as my brother. Doug, you were my little brother, and I was always supposed to look after you. I'll continue to do my duty and make sure that Danica, Kate, and Tavis are looked after, and that they know they can reach out to me for anything, and I will be there on your behalf. I will miss you terribly until the next time we meet. When we do, I will have those tickets to go see Queen live. And in the meantime, I hope you and Dad are catching up at a dinner table somewhere. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu. I'll give it to you after. I got you. We're going to ask Craig to come. Craig is Doug's brother-in-law, so come on up.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Craig Nagai. I'm Doug's brother-in-law, but it started long before that. I met Doug at Ewan's Institute of Taekwondo in Coquitlam in the late 80s. We found out that we had many mutual friends, but our paths didn't cross previously, even though we went to the same high school just a few grades apart. At Ewan's, with a small group, we trained 5 to 6 days a week in the quest for our black belts. Doug would learn the techniques and execute to perfection, always meticulous in his training, and eventually attaining the black belt in 1993, and being one of the first handful of black belts from this school. Something he was proud of, but he didn't broadcast to all. It wasn't just Taekwondo, but it was arnis, joint locks, and limb destruction, a well-rounded martial artist. He would go to various seminars and take the opportunity to learn from the different masters, and became an instructor there to lead kids and their adults along their martial arts journey. One story from that time was that Doug and a few of us signed up for this fire walk. We went to the El Dorado Hotel in Kingsway, into this small banquet room with a bunch of other people. We did these breathing techniques and calmed our mind and body, almost putting ourselves into a trance. It was kind of surreal, but we figured and hoped they knew what they were doing. We go to this grassy area by the hotel where they had 3 or 4 metal barrels cut in half and they'd been burning some type of wood all day. It was dark. We came out, they flipped these barrels over, and these bright embers were flipped onto the grass, and they raked them out to a runway about 20 feet long. They were glowing, and we could feel the heat. They told us they had a hose running at the end of the runway to cool our feet, just in case we had anything within our toes. I remember looking at Doug and shrugging our shoulders, without any words, kind of saying, "We're here now." No turning back, but kind of waiting for one of us to bail or say this was crazy. But we walked over those glowing embers, and we didn't burn our feet. It was totally nuts. Went to the beer store right at the hotel, had a few cold ones in the parking lot. Couldn't believe we did it, but it was total mind over matter. During those years, he bought his beloved 25th anniversary Mustang convertible. Many of you have seen it under the cover in the garage, a beautiful car that he kept spotless. I was fortunate enough to drive in it a lot. We'd go to White Rock and Robson Street, cruise through Stanley Park and English Bay, head down to Birch Bay. We even drove up to Kelowna and Penticton for a day in it. He didn't drive the show off. He just loved it, being in it and cruising around. Besides being a fantastic dad, Doug was a great uncle to Cavell, Jenica, Justin, Shelby, Aneko, Mika, and Emiko. Always with quick wit and one-liners, making them
Finish there, buddy. That's something to build off. I have about 5 pages. I sent it to Danica, and she's like, "No, I don't want to read it. You can just surprise me." So, no pressure. But it's been pretty awesome today to hear the stories about Doug. I mean, it really confirms what a great man he was, what kind of special imprint he left on all of us. It's clear Doug was many things to many people. He was a loving husband to Danica. He was an amazing dad to Caden Tavis. He was a caring son. He was an awesome uncle. He was an excellent brother-in-law and a son-in-law. He was a great coworker, and he was a good friend. I think we all kind of knew that stuff, and it's been cool to hear some of the stories that kind of tie with some of the things I'm going to talk about too. But there's some other things and other perspectives I thought maybe I'd share with you guys. I want to, really take the opportunity to celebrate Doug's life and tell some good stories and fun stories. So I thought Doug would like that. If he wasn't falling asleep on me on the couch when I was talking, we usually had a good laugh. So I thought I'd dive into it. But there's one thing we need to get out of the way first. It's kind of the elephant in the room. And some of you know that Doug had a bit of an addiction problem, and he kind of battled it for his whole life. Doug loved Coke, a cola. Doug and Coca-Cola were like roast beef and mashed potatoes, like hockey and ice, and like popcorn and butter. I have never met anyone into a beverage as much as Doug was into Coke. It was really weird, actually. I'm talking about like the real Coke, not like the off-brand stuff, and heaven forbid, don't ever say Pepsi to Doug. That wasn't Coke. Doug drank Cokes like most of us drank beer. Doug didn't drink coffee. Doug drank Coke. Doug collected Coke memorabilia and merchandise, so he has quite the stash at home there. Doug loved to offer me Coke in weird bottles and cans and special editions that came out. It was like Doug was an unpaid Coke spokesperson. He probably should have got some kind of kickback from Coke for all the Coke selling he did over the years. The story that sums it up best for how much Doug was into Coke is like, when you go to a restaurant and you want to order a beverage, the server comes over and everybody refers to it as Coke. You say, "I'll have a Coke," and the server says, "We don't have Coke. Is Pepsi okay?" And you go, "Yeah, that's fine. Pepsi's fine." Well, Doug would actually say no. And I was like, "What?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, no, I don't drink Pepsi. I'll just have a water." So you're like, "Okay, awkward." And the server would kind of look at him like, no one ever says no. But that's just how Doug was. I recently saw a photo. Darren dragged one out when we were together last week, allegedly showing Doug drinking a Pepsi. It was taken in the 90s. It was from behind. Everybody had hair, so you couldn't really confirm who was who in the photo. Darren swears it was Doug. I'm like, yeah, it kind of looks like him, but wasn't sure. But it was the only evidence ever proven to show that Doug actually drank a Pepsi, right? So if you want to see that, ask Darren. He'll gladly show it to you. When chatting with Caden Tavis last week too, I learned another little secret addiction of Doug's, and that was that how much he loved popcorn. I knew, like, we'd taken the boys to movies, and you know, Doug would always plow through a giant bag of popcorn faster than anybody. But so I knew he liked popcorn, but like talking to these guys, it was like next level liking popcorn. So like the thing was, they told me that his favorite snack after work, like after working a double or whatever you guys did, he'd come home and he'd brew up a huge bowl of popcorn and crack a Coke, and that was like his go-to snack. No matter what time of night it was, or in the, you know, it was just always Coke and popcorn. He was really, actually, I learned he was really into popcorn. He was into popcorn technology. He's had air poppers. He's had oil poppers. He's got this crazy bowl thing going now that's like, I don't even understand how it works. He's actually worn out popcorn bowls. I don't even know how you do that either, but Doug did it. And then when talking to the boys, they also said, well, he liked the popcorn, but it was also the butter that he really liked. He was really into the butter, and it was like, they said he would melt like a half a stick of butter and then like drown the popcorn and then get that Coke. So it was kind of like, okay, it's a snack, all right. So I think his ideal day was to have that popcorn Coke and then watch Shawshank Redemption on TV. That was his favorite movie, so that was probably his go-to move. The boys would tell me too that late at night they knew Dad was home from work when they could smell the popcorn kind of cooking up at whatever time in the evening, and that was like, yeah, Dad's home from his shift. So that was kind of cool to know. I guess we've all learned too that Doug was an accomplished athlete. I just said Doug an athlete in the same sentence. I know that doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody. All seriously though, like he was a black belt in Taekwondo, and he didn't just achieve this high level in the discipline, but he was also, as you guys heard, he was an instructor at Ewan's dojo back in the day. So as he told me once, technically he was a paid professional athlete. So when I learned that, I used to ask him, like, is it Taekwondo or Taekwondo or is it Taekwondon't? And I knew that bugged him, so he kind of got him riled up. And then, like, I would say, is that the martial arts where the guys just kind of wrestle and pull on shirts? And like, is that the one we're talking about? And he would just like shrug me off, tell me I'm an idiot. So I've known him for 30 years, and I don't think I've ever saw Doug get mad. I saw Doug get mad once, and I'll tell you guys about that story in a second. But like, I mean, he would get Dad mad, like yell at Tavis for like screaming too much, playing Fortnite, like that kind of mad I saw all the time, but not like lose your marbles mad, I'm gonna fight you in the bar kind of mad. So, you know, it was sort of weird. Doug had this black belt, and like no one ever saw him use these technologies and skills that he had learned. So I said to him one time, I was like, man, you're a black belt. Your hands are registered lethal weapons, which he would tell me that as well. So, but you never get mad. I've never seen you use your skills. For all I know, you've got a black belt and pulling a shirt over a guy's head. And then Doug, I think that snapped Doug. He grabbed me. He like totally spun me around, put me in this like crazy arm bar. Like I was like 1 second away from having my arm ripped off. And I started laughing so hard. And he's just, you know, dead silent. He's got me in this crazy arm bar. And he goes, Steve, look at that. I didn't even have to pull your shirt, and I could snap your arm off right here. And then he leaned in, he whispered in my ear, and he's like, also, it's Taekwondo. I was like, okay. So I knew he had the skills then at that point. Speaking of athletics, did you guys know that Doug played basketball? No, you probably didn't. Imagine that now. It is true, back in the day, this is when I say back in the day before we had kids, there was a group of our friends that gathered once a week, and we played some pickup basketball at a couple of different gyms. We called it the UBA, the Unathletic Basketball Association. And yes, Doug was a verified member in good standing with the UBA. Now, Doug was not built for basketball, as you probably are all aware. None of us really were, let's be honest. But like when I think back, like Doug's vertical was probably 2 inches for height, and I think his stat was like 99% missed shots. So, you know, he was definitely at the bottom of the UBA in stats. But like Doug tried, as we all know, Doug is a determined guy. Doug tried. Doug was a sweaty mess after every single game. Like, just looked like he got run over by a truck, and he would maybe get one free throw out of the whole thing. But his stout Scottish stature, we figured out eventually would, and his taekwondo skills would combine to make him an awesome defensive force. So if you got Doug on your team, you would just be like, Doug, why don't you just kind of hang back a little bit and you play defense? And he did it with like a vibrancy that like I've never seen. So it was pretty awesome. One game stood out for me, though, that was kind of like the defining moment of Doug's UBA career. As usual, it was a regular night for Doug. He was like 0 for 500 on shots, and there was just a couple minutes left in the game. He was a sweaty mess as usual, and he had his running battle with one of the other unnamed UBA players, because he may be watching today, so I don't want to incriminate anybody, who was equally unathletic to him, and they was sort of a similar defensive player. These guys would just trade missed shots all night. They would just bash into each other, try and run each other over. It was like an unstoppable force against an immovable wall, kind of colliding every time. So clock's winding down, the beers are getting closer to being drank, and this player made actually a pretty athletic play for him, and sort of the ball was heading out of bounds. He grabbed it, and Doug was guarding him. He grabbed the ball and he whipped it back and hit Doug right in the chest. The ball bounced off Doug, went out of bounds off Doug, so his team gets the ball. So we were like, first off, we were like, holy, like, where did this guy get this skill? That was the first thing. And then we looked over and we saw Doug like just going red, and we were like, uh-oh. And then like it just happened. Like Doug reached down, picked up the ball, winds up, launches it, and he hits this other guy square in the face. And like drops this guy, sack of hammers, bag of potatoes down on the ground. Buddy's on the ground, bleeding out his nose. Doug's just standing over him, like kind of like that Muhammad Ali picture, you know, where you're just like, what is going on here? And deadpan, one of our buddies chimes in. He's like, nice shot, Doug. That's the first thing you hit all night. Doug looked up. He was like, just kind of smiled at our friend and mumbled, that'll learn you. And then he walked away. So that's Doug's basketball career. Well, Doug's athletic career may have been questionable. I know he loved watching his two sons play their sports. I'm confident when I tell you that Cade and Tavis were the true athletes in the family. Like, I kind of think it skipped a generation, kind of like where hair skips a generation, like maybe skills skipped a generation with your dad, and you guys got most of the skills. I know it was a huge source of pride for Doug to see Cade and Tavis excel in their respective sports. For both boys early on, it was soccer. And then Doug loved watching the boys play and compete. He loved being out in the field, rain or shine. Doug was always there, which was cool. As the boys got older and their sporting tastes evolved, Doug loved sharing with his friends and family what was happening with their sporting lives. Cade took up track and field and has quickly shown some amazing promise as he looks towards his university career. Cade, you are way faster than your dad, even in his prime, so just know that. For Tavis, it's been soccer and ball hockey, and I know that Doug loved watching these games, especially as you got older, and the level of compete and ferocity increased. He seemed to take pleasure in sort of the more physical games. Doug, your dad loved a good hard-fought battle, right? And I can see where you get your toughness and your tenacity from your dad. You guys have made him super proud, and I know he'll continue to watch you guys as you get older. Speaking of Doug's dry wit, it was probably my favorite part of his personality. I know for a lot of you guys, especially your coworkers, you guys can't say how it all went, but I know how it went with Doug. He was one of a kind for his wit. He had awesome comebacks. He was the king of the burn, and he was deliberate in just like a super dry style, which was classic Doug. I used to call him the original Captain Obvious. He had an awesome take on people, and his observations were usually spot on. Have you ever heard Doug ever say any of these things? Really? So what you're telling me is, oh, it's funny you should mention that. Get a load of this guy. And my favorite was, check out this meathead. Doug did love to laugh, though. Our families have spent a lot of time together over the years. We've traveled together a lot, and we've had some memorable trips to Whistler, Qualicum Beach, Birch Bay, and many, many other fun places. We spent birthdays and special occasions together, and we were always laughing through it all. Even as life got busy, we always made time for each other and for our friend group, and I know Doug really enjoyed this part of his life. Kids and parents hanging out, having fun, awesome food, lots of Coca-Cola, maybe a few beers, Doug crushing Karen's famous 7-layer dip, and really not leaving any for anybody else, and some good laughs. our once-a-month meetups were pretty awesome, and we always had fun. They became even more awesome when we integrated the game Cards Against Humanity. I don't know if you guys know that game. If you don't, you should look it up, or Danica can explain it to you later. Doug loved this game. We would just laugh the whole time. It was a pretty amazing, fun time. But Doug would actually get frustrated when we played this game. He would get frustrated at Danica for how bad she was at this game. I don't know how you can be bad. And he would actually say, "Can you do better at this game?" Which, again, is kind of, if you look up this game, you'll know that's hard to do too. Doing better is actually requires two things: some really good cards and a slightly twisted sense of humor. I'm not sure which one Danica was lacking. She would constantly blame the cards, but no matter what, it made even for more laughs watching Doug get stressed out at her lack of winning at Cards Against Humanity. As he put it, "You're holding me back." One area that Danica did do a lot of winning, though, was when our wives went on their annual USA cross-border shopping trips. Right around American Thanksgiving, Danica and my wife Karen and a few other unnamed suspects would head south to take advantage of Black Friday shopping deals before Christmas. For the guys, this trip was met with mixed emotions. On the one hand, it got us out of doing Christmas shopping, which we were all thankful for, but we also knew it was going to cost us. It was like a trade-off to have this happen. And they would spend money. The ladies actually even created a trophy, and they would award it to who was the best shopper on the trip. This usually meant if your wife won the best shopper, she also spent the most money. And it was here where Danica showed her true winning spirit to Doug, and she would easily take home the trophy almost every year. Now, if you guys know Doug and money, I think he still has the first nickel he ever got. So watching Danica roll up in a minivan full of stuff, that was probably the hardest thing in the world for Doug. But he would never flinch. When she would get presented with the trophy, there's no tears from Doug, no beads of sweat coming down his forehead, just cool, calm Doug watching Danica win. That's when I knew that Doug had an incredible patience and a love for Danica and the ability to tolerate pain at a level that the rest of the guys I knew just couldn't handle. Doug always did say, "Happy wife, happy life." I mean, ultimately, I think I knew that Doug was destined to be a firefighter. There was an early tell that I saw when I got to know him and before he started at the department. Doug liked to wash cars, really wash cars. Just like how firefighters like to wash trucks, right? You guys love doing that? Doug did. And he would tell me that all the time, too. Doug and Danica used to live across the street from us, and you knew that every weekend, nice and early, you could count on Doug being out front of the house washing his cars. My other neighbor and I, we used to we would come out and we'd actually get pissed off because it'd be like, "Oh man, Doug's out there washing the cars again. That means we're going to hear about it from our wives. Why aren't you guys washing the cars like Doug washes cars?" We were like, okay, whatever. Doug had lots of cars to wash, of course. He was a bit of a car guy. From his prized possession, his 1990 Ford 5-liter Mustang, which we called AKA the Vanilla Ice Mobile, to basically every version of a Honda Civic, Odyssey, and Pilot ever made. Doug washed them like they were newborn babies. So careful, so gentle. I think besides Coke, Doug loved Hondas. I don't even know what the relation is there. Hearing Boo's story about the yellow CRX, I didn't know about that one, so that's another vehicle to the Honda pile. He's just into Hondas, so. So it was one time I saw Doug washing out in front of his house, and I yelled out over to him. I was like, "Hey man, nice work. You now have the shiniest minivan out of all of us, and no one cares about a shiny minivan." This is when we all had our kids in toddler stage. And he replied, "It won't always be a minivan, dude." He was the first guy to get rid of the minivan and drive an SUV while all of the rest of us were driving our dirty little minivans. Even worse was when Doug would see me washing my car, or one of our cars. He would come over and point out all the mistakes, all the areas I missed, and then ask if I wanted to help so I could help make my wife happier. I would mumble the F word to him and say, "No, thank you." I probably should have taken him up on the offer, though. So I'm going to end with one of my favorite Doug stories. We used to have a big Christmas party at our house every year. This one year, the Christmas party happened to be on a snowy Saturday night. We'd gotten 2 feet of snow on that day, which was crazy for here in Maple Ridge. Most of us didn't have kids at the time, so especially in those Christmas parties, they were pretty fun and everyone was having a good time. This is also when Doug was just getting into his on-call part of his career with the fire department here. And like the trusty firefighter he was keeping it sober at the party, drinking his Cokes while the rest of us drank booze. Doug was literally probably the only guy not drinking at this party this time, and he probably had to explain like 300 times to people like what on-call firefighting was, because nobody knew what that meant. It was just Doug and a couple of pregnant wives who were staying off the sauce this night. So as the night wound down, one of the couples at the party had to make a drive back to Port Coquitlam. The unnamed husband was tanked, and the wife was pregnant, but they had one of their toddlers with them that night. So they went out and they decided, well, we'll start up the minivan, warm it up, and then we can put the kid in there, and then it's good to go. So they went out, started up the minivan, loaded in the sleeping toddler, and then shut the door, but didn't realize until after the door had closed that the keys were in it. Obviously, the van's running, and now the doors are locked. So this normally would be a big deal, but not a crazy big deal, but mix in like 50 drunk people, it goes to code red immediately. So there was a lot of booze flowing. Our party guests instantly went on red alert. Guys started looking around my house for things like rocks or hammers to smash windows to save the child, who was peacefully sleeping and in a nice warm van. Someone panicked and said, "Oh my gosh, look at the snow around the tailpipe. He could suffocate, he could die." Doug interjected at this point as we were all standing around outside, and he said, "Why don't we just clear the snow away from the tailpipe?" Again, showing that he was originally the original Captain Obvious. This calmed down the one person, but everybody else was still freaking out. Unbeknownst to us, someone, and we don't know who, and to this day we've never found out, someone called 911 from inside our house. So I was outside with 3 other guys trying to convince one of our buddies to give me his T-shirt so I could wrap it around a hammer so we could quietly smash a window to get the kid out. Doug's pager goes off. You guys remember the pager? Some of you are old school. Pager goes off. He's like listening. We're all still freaking out. Doug grabs me and the guy that owns a van. He pulls us together and he goes, "Listen, don't do anything stupid. I'll be right back." We're like, and then he walked across the street, goes across the street, hops in his car. Good timing. And he drives away. And we're like, "Dude, what are you doing? This isn't helping. We got to get the kid out of the van." So then my buddy's like, "Let's go through the sunroof. Let's figure it out." So as we're still freaking out, 8 minutes later, we hear the sound of a fire truck getting closer and closer. Then around the corner comes one of the big Maple Ridge Fire Department trucks. Sirens wailing, Doug driving, smiling, and hammering on the horn at like 1 a.m. Truck pulls up. I'm pretty sure a few of you guys that work here were on that truck. You guys jump off, come rushing over. One Slim Jim maneuver later, van's open. The kid who's quietly sleeping in a nice warm van gets waken up by 50 drunk people, starts crying, and then the rest of the party tries to invite all the firefighters in for a beer because they just saved the child's life. So I look at Doug after this kind of calms down, and I at first asked him to give me a ride in the fire truck. He always said no, so that's okay. And I go, "Hey, who called 911? Who called 911? He looked at me, he smiled, and he said, "I don't know who called 911, but if I'm going to help you idiots, I may as well get paid to do it." So I thought, okay, quick 5 things to remember Doug by. In an emergency, number 5, stay calm, call 911, let the pros handle it, especially if you've been drinking. Doug would approve. Number 4, when you wash your car, don't miss a spot. Doug would be proud of your shiny car and your keen attention to detail. Number 3, when you play Cards Against Humanity, do your best to win. Doug would approve. Number 2, when somebody asks, "Do you want extra butter on your popcorn at the movies?" the answer is always yes. Doug would like that too. And the number 1 way to remember Doug, easy, only drink Coke. When someone says, "Do you want a Pepsi?" you just look them right in the eyes, you say no. Doug would be proud of you. Thank you.
Steve's just going to remain up here. I'm going to ask Kate and Tavis to come on up.
Thank you everyone for being here today. I am Doug's oldest son, Cade, and this is my not-so-little brother, Tavis. As hard as it is for me to admit, when we would go to the hospital to visit my dad, the nurses always had to ask who was older. My dad was a great guy, and I am so thankful for what he did for our family along with everyone he interacted with. My dad had respect for everyone he met, which was a great trait to have. He may be gone way too soon, but at the end of the day, he wasn't 49. Ever since I was little, if I asked how old he was, the answer was always 22. which I never understood how he was the same age for years. I think he was trying to keep himself as young as possible, despite his gray hairs slowly creeping in. My dad had quite the addiction for Coca-Cola. If there was none in the house, as soon as he noticed, you can bet he would be off to the grocery store. This held true when the pandemic started. When he knew places were shutting, he rushed to the store to buy 4 flats worth of Coke, just to be safe. My dad had some odd ideas. If we went to the mall, expect to be going for a walk in the parking lot, because the car can't get any door dings. But you would end up soaked if it was pouring rain. Great idea, Dad. My dad had one hoodie he loved and wore it every day, especially watching a movie or doing yard work. He wore it to the point it wasn't fluffy anymore. My mom tried to throw it out and took it straight to the garbage, and we thought that was the end of it. Little did we know, a few days later he would appear in the kitchen wearing it again. I don't think my dad has ever fully watched a movie because he was always falling asleep. He tried Bohemian Rhapsody 3 times and never finished it. Unless it was Shawshank Redemption. He watched this one probably 1,000 times. If it was on TV, it was being watched in our house. One thing that sticks out to me is the time we went to Bellis Fair Mall, and my dad, thinking he was still 22, disappeared into a fitting room to try something on. He reappeared in camouflage joggers that looked more like skinny jeans, a cropped t-shirt, and a jean vest that was 3 sizes too small. I hope you all know this wasn't that long ago. Well, he didn't end up bringing his purchase home. He did bring his usual supply of Almond Joys back over the border. For someone gone so soon, my dad, in our opinion, lived a full life and accomplished more than many people ever would. My brother and I learned many great lessons from my dad. Respect is always earned, not expected. Never forget where you come from or how you got there. One thing I heard my dad say a lot was, worry about yourselves and not everyone else. He also taught Tavis and I that if you're going to do something, you're going to commit to it. If you're not going to do it 110% and do it right, then it's best you never waste your time at all. This is something I will always live by. I urge every single one of you to not wait on anything. If you want to do something, get out there and do it today, because sometimes you never know what life will bring your way. On behalf of my mom, Tavis, and I, we would like to thank all of our family, friends, and the entire Maple Ridge Fire Department and the community for all that you have done for our family. Words cannot express the gratitude we feel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Captain Gary Porter to come and share.
My name's Gary Porter. I'm a co-worker at Doug's, obviously. But more importantly, I'm very lucky to being able to call Doug my friend. The Maple Ridge Fire Department is a mission-critical team that is indigenously trained, who solve rapidly emergent and complex problem sets, and who work in immersive environments where the consequences of failure is often catastrophic loss. Doug Armour was very determined to become part of this team. Doug applied for and was accepted as a recruit to attend the 2001 volunteer recruit course. However, the department was going through a transition period at the time, and this course was put on hold. The fact that Doug had volunteered to give back to the community he and Danica had recently settled in should tell you a bit about the person that he was. After a brief period, the course was to go ahead. However, it was no longer a volunteer fire department, it was now a paid-on-call fire department. Doug officially joined the Maple Ridge Fire Department in 2001 after successfully completing his recruit course. There were 18 candidates on the course, all of who successfully completed the program. They were named the Heat Seekers. At the time, this was the largest recruit course ever run by the department, and that record stood until just recently. Doug made many friends on this course, many of whom still serve in the department today, and some that have gone on to join other career fire departments. I first met Doug in 2002 after completing my recruit course. In comparison, there was only 6 members on my course, most of whom went to Fire Hall 2 in Wannock. I was the only one that went to Fire Hall 1. Other than the instructors on my course, I didn't know anybody at Hall 1. Doug, along with Paul Craig, were the first Hall 1 firefighters I met. It was a little daunting for me attending my first call, but thankfully Doug was the first man I met. Doug introduced himself to me, approaching me with his big beaming smile and with his hand fully extended to shake mine. It was a very warm welcome, with Doug looking me directly in the eye, and with a firm handshake, he said, Doug Armour, nice to meet you. Doug immediately made me feel welcome, like I was part of the team and that I belonged. Doug had that way of making you feel at ease, and we quickly became friends. With introductions complete and Doug being senior to me, he promptly put me to work cleaning up the truck bay. Although he had been in the department for only a few months himself, he was already behaving like a leader. Sometimes when we were paged for a call, we might arrive too late to make a truck, but there would always be plenty of work to do around the truck bay and the fire hall. And of course, Doug would put us to work. Doug would delegate work to his group of followers, but with him always working harder than anybody else. Doug always displayed a great work ethic, and it was contagious to be around him. You couldn't help but work. This was the case whether you were at the hall, on the fire ground, or during training. Doug quickly became the go-to guy amongst the firefighters. Anytime you were unsure of something, or didn't know where something was, or didn't know how to do something, you could ask Doug, and he would have the answers. Doug didn't become this person by luck. To become this person, he put in hours of study and hard work. Doug always exceeded the requirements to remain in good standing at the hall, at practice and at emergency calls. He was well known for his never-give-up mentality to solving problems on the fire ground and other emergencies, and this earned him the respect from other firefighters and officers. Caden Tavis, your dad, he was tough. One time at a structure fire in Wannock, Doug had deployed a 2.5-inch hose line to the back of the house, and he was attacking the fire through an open window. Unbeknown to him, another guy had deployed a line to the front side of the house and was attacking the fire also. This guy accidentally hit Doug with a straight stream to the head. Okay? This was like getting punched out. It knocked your dad down, knocked his helmet off, but Doug was okay. After a few expletives, he stood up, put his helmet back on, and got back in the fight. And eventually, he saved the foundation. One night, just after 10 p.m., an apartment fire, Doug and I were at, and we were on the same company. There was a confirmed fire involving 2 adjoining suites. There had already been a couple of rescues performed using ladders to remove people from the second floor balconies. We were tasked with searching the second floor for occupants. As soon as we opened the door to the hallway, we were enveloped with heavy smoke from floor to ceiling. Doug had the nozzle, and he made his way through the smoke to the hallway, where we immediately found a man on the floor unconscious. The man had ridden his electric scooter down the hallway, but upon reaching the stairs, he could go no further. The smoke had overcome the man, and he must have passed out, fallen to the floor. Doug passed me the nozzle. He grabbed the man, dragging him out and handing him off to Dennis, who took him out to the paramedics. The man made a full recovery. Doug, Chris Cadet and I continued searching on our hands and knees, trying to stay under the smoke, moving from suite to suite, checking for occupants. I was trying to force my way through a door, and the door wouldn't open. It seemed there was an oven against the door, and I couldn't get the door open. I yelled to Doug, "They've barricaded the door." Doug had a look in, he just managed to get his head inside. He managed to get it open enough and promptly informed me, "It's a storage locker, you idiot." We located a couple of people trapped in their suite. Due to the thick smoke in the hallway, there was no other way out. I remember Doug sending them to the balcony, and then he calmly radioed the incident commander, telling him our location so that men outside could rescue them by ladder. On our way out, Doug noticed, he looked into the bedroom and he noticed somebody in bed and under the covers. The 3 of us went in and calling to the person, but we got no reply. Doug quickly rips back the covers to reveal a blow-up doll. I wasn't sure who had more of a surprised look on the face, Doug or the doll. I suggested we throw it off the balcony, but of course Doug would have none of that. He was always looking after people and doing the right thing and helping others to keep out of trouble. Doug quickly moved through the paid-on-call ranks, progressing from firefighter to driver-operator. This was a huge responsibility. Doug now had to ensure everybody arrived at the scene safely, and he had to ensure that he could supply water for fire control. As every pump operator knows, this was easier said than done. As a pump operator, Doug was second to none, and he was quickly signed off to drive and operate all fire department apparatus, including our 100-foot aerial ladder truck. Doug was the guy all the captains wanted driving for them. He made sure he knew all of the trucks and how to operate all the components inside and out. Early on in Doug's career, he joined the Honour Guard, attending many ceremonies and events, including Canada Day, Remembrance Day. Doug was a great ambassador for the department, and he always looked polished and immaculate in his dress uniform. He got involved with fire department training, playing a big role in recruit courses and paid-on-call training. Doug became a captain himself after successfully completing the 2005 company officer course. He was now sitting in the right front seat, giving direction and orders to firefighters at emergency scenes, but in reality, not much had changed. Doug always was a leader, and he loved the responsibility of being in charge. The only change that had been made was that Doug now had the title of captain. In 2005, the department saw more change in that it transitioned to a composite career and paid-on-call department. There was a hiring process, selecting members to start in 2005 and early 2006. I'm sure after much consultation that both Doug and Danica agreed on what needed to be done to achieve a career position. Doug had taken every course offered to him, participated in all fire department charity and social events, exceeded all requirements for training and emergency calls. He joined a gym to improve his strength and fitness and hired an interview coach. In short, Doug left nothing to chance. When Doug decided to do something, he made sure it happened. There was no stopping him. If at first he didn't succeed, he persevered until he got it right. Doug had a can-do approach to everything. And in 2007, he applied for a position as a career firefighter and was very successful, and he finished at the top of the selection process. Over the next few months, Doug spent time between Fire Hall 1 and Hall 3 making close friends with members of his shift. He would often work hard at this craft, and he quickly became very well respected and trusted member in the career ranks. Doug, Clint, Chris Bailey and Mary were back at another apartment fire. Clint had controlled the fire and had located somebody down on the floor. Doug quickly sprang into action, removing the victim from the smoke-filled suite where he and Mary carried the victim downstairs and to safety. This man made a full recovery. Doug had now been involved in 2 successful rescues, of course not including the blow-up doll. Most firefighters never get to experience even one. Throughout the years moving from shift to shift, Doug put in a lot of firefighting, and he improved his skills equally as much. He was building relationships. He built great relationships with his brothers and sisters in the fire department. Doug was always up for a chat and willing to give helpful advice whenever he could. I think Doug found his calling. He loved this job and was heard to say, "I can't believe we're getting paid to do this job. It's almost like stealing money." Doug was promoted to the rank of training officer, where he moved into the training division full-time. Doug and Brian Vinci were now working together side by side, organising and training the members of the department. They both got along famously as they shared similar ideals and beliefs. Doug spent the next few years training new recruits to become firefighters. He and Captain Taylor ran the driver-operator program, teaching firefighters to drive and operate fire trucks. These were just a few of the courses and skills that Doug had developed and taught. In actual fact, there were many more. Doug was always very professional in his approach to training, and he took the job very, very seriously. Doug loved teaching, the skills that he had mastered to new recruits. In this new role, he learnt how to schedule and organise training activities for both the career and the paid-on-call members. His tacit knowledge transfer was remarkable, and new recruits were able to benefit from Doug's broad range of experiences and unique storytelling abilities. Doug was a real diplomat, and he always fostered harmonious relationships throughout the department. Concluding Doug's time as a training officer, and after a brief period returning to suppression, he was promoted to Assistant Chief Operations. I believe Doug had finally achieved a lifelong goal of becoming a chief officer. A lot of people have the dream but can't live the reality. Doug had the dream, and with a life of hard work, persistence and sacrifice, he was now living the reality of being the operations chief for the Maple Ridge Fire Department. His new role was one that Doug was well suited for, building and maintaining fire trucks and procuring new cutting-edge tools and equipment was something that Doug was passionate about. The new aerial ladder truck, the new tender trucks was some of Doug's visible projects that Doug was responsible for. And those trucks are outside here today. There are many other not-so-visible projects like truck repairs, tool maintenance and expense items that Doug organised and procured to keep the department running. In this role, Doug believed he could do the most good and effect the most positive change in the fire department. In fact, Doug had always been putting himself out of his comfort zone and in positions where he could make positive changes. Doug had a great relationship with the other chief officers, with Jack Nicolay, our mechanic, with Diane, Jackie and Sabrina, the administration staff. He loved the paid-on-call members at Fire Hall 2, whom he was responsible for, and he loved his career watch, A-Watch. Doug was a real people person, and he put people over hardware every time. Doug lived by a set of values, and he believed they meant nothing if he didn't live by them every day. Those values are elite honesty and integrity, elite learning, elite mateship or friendship, elite professionalism, and elite humility. Doug had achieved so much during his career, but he always remained humble, never forgetting his roots and where he came from. He touched everyone in a positive way throughout his time in the department, always being a friend first and a boss second. And he will be sadly missed and never forgotten by all of us. Although Doug had achieved many great things in the fire department, his greatest achievement is his family. Doug loved sharing stories of family vacations to Whistler, where he, Danica, Cade and Tavis would ski in the winter and mountain bike in the summer. He often spoke of family trips to Birch Bay when he was a youngster, and that he was now doing that with his own family. He was so proud of it. He proudly shared some stories of the boys playing soccer and football, ball hockey, and how Cade was involved with track and field. Your dad loved bragging about you boys. He was so proud of you. He loved the time he spent with Danica and the boys. He loved you all very much. It's been my honour to be able to share a few words about my good friend Doug Armour. Danica, Cade, Tavis, Elizabeth, Stu, and extended family, on behalf of the firefighters, the officers and the administration staff, please accept our deepest condolences at Doug's loss. May Doug rest in peace and never be forgotten.
Thank you, Captain Porter. Chief Exner.
We're getting quite a collection of black masks up here. Good morning, Danica, Cade, Tavis, Mrs. Armour, Stu, Jennifer, Shelby, family all, and Maple Ridge firefighters. Welcome to Doug's second home. This is where Doug excelled the best. This is Doug's room. Doug was responsible here as an assistant chief for everything that you see inside here, from the smallest screwdriver to the largest truck. And he, as Captain Porter already pointed out, he had organized, designed, and built many of the trucks that we have on staff today. Because of this room and what it meant to Doug, I thought that this would be an appropriate venue to have today's ceremony. I cannot think of a better place. From an administrative perspective, Douglas McCall Armour, commonly referred to as Doug or Dougie, began his career here at the City of Maple Ridge Fire Department, as we heard, as a paid on-call firefighter in the fall of 2001. Doug and 17 others began their careers, and the heat seekers, that was the class, would prove to be a very productive class, with 8 out of the 18 people becoming career firefighters, 7 here in Maple Ridge, and there are 2 very special members who've remained as paid on-call firefighters today at number 3 Fire Hall. Indeed, it was an exceptional group of people that Doug was involved with. And as we heard, in 2001, it was a very turbulent time for our fire department. The fire department was going through a huge change. There was much turmoil and tribulation as we evolved from a volunteer fire department to a paid on-call fire department. It wasn't a popular choice by all the firefighters. It was one of those choices that was made that was an administrative nightmare. It was 50-50. 50% wanted to go, and 50% didn't want to go. And it made for strife and a very uncomfortable time. To be a recruit class coming into that was very difficult. The change is hard in the organization and on its members, and for the new person coming in, it was very challenging. To the wrong person, it could end in a disastrous ending, and to others, they could well excel. And this class did excel. And this is where we first ever do. Well, we only saw Doug in the fire department, or I only saw Doug in the fire department exhibit his quiet confidence. We've also heard from many other speakers here today that that was a trait that was stuck well with him. And you only get that from 2 places. You either learn it from somebody or you're born with it. If you're lucky enough, you get both. And my hat goes off to Mr. and Mrs. Armour, because obviously he had both. The other skill that I'd like to talk about, or the other trait that I'd like to talk about, is his resolute to action. And we heard about that today, whether it be basketball, which apparently he wasn't very skilled at, or whether it was firefighting, which he was very skilled at. He was resolute to action. Being firm and unwavering in your convictions to do your duty, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. And that was Doug. End of the story. Many could find it frustrating and describe it as being stubbornness, but when you really looked at it mindfully, he wanted the right thing to be done. Whether it was teaching a recruit to fold hose properly into a hose tray, or trying to teach a niece to check their engine oil before their first driving lesson. These were all things that had to be done first, and they had to be done right. It was Doug's understanding that all tasks were to be done 100% right, 100% of the time. And moreover, it was one of the ways that he showed he cared about you. If he was ever instructing you or helping you, he was instructing you because he really cared about you, and he wanted you to do well. And he wanted you to be safe at whatever it was that he was helping you with. As we've heard about Doug's leadership skills, his exceptional leadership qualities, I believe that these 2 attributes were the ones that drove Doug to the pinnacle of his career. I would argue that Doug was a craftsman in the trade. He knew how to do things. Lots of people know how to do things. He also knew why we had to do them and when we had to do them. And to do that, you have to be a craftsman. And that's something for all of us to excel to. That's for all of us to reach for. It didn't matter in what he was doing, apparently even in basketball. And he did carry this on through his life here at the fire department, and I'm sure at home as well, and on to his private life. Because of these qualities of quiet confidence and resolute to action, he had exceptional leadership skills, and there is no doubt about that. As we heard already from Captain Porter, Doug began as a recruit firefighter, which was no easy task. He became a probationary firefighter, and then he graduated from that to a go-to firefighter on the floor. Didn't matter if you were paid on call or if you were a career, he was a go-to guy. If you wanted to know how to do something or why you needed to do it that way, he was the man to go and check out. With his knowledge growth and with his understanding in the fire department, as we heard, he became an instructor, and he also became a mentor in our recruit programs. A mentor was a challenging position where a new person had a buddy, somebody to look up to, somebody to talk to, somebody that helped them along. And so he fulfilled that role extremely well. When I was reading on Facebook different posts, there were several posts to that, and that's what a mentor was. They were the big brother troop to the little brother troop. We also heard that he became a paid on-call firefighter, and in 2007, he worked himself to the position where he was able to accept a position as a career firefighter. And then he was able to be used as, or utilized in the training division as an instructor on 2 lengthy secondments, and then later on he was promoted to training officer. In 2017, I had the honor and the privilege of promoting him to Assistant Chief Operations and Fire Prevention. Although the meeting when I dropped in to give the offer didn't go particularly well. I'd never had anybody sit there and tell me, well, you know what, I'll look the stuff over and get back to you before. Usually people are climbing over the table to try to sign the papers before you finished explaining things, but that's not what Doug nor Danica did to me. I left that day thinking, I don't know if I've got a new assistant chief or not. We'll have to wait until he got back to me. The next day, he showed up with the paper signed, and I breathed a sigh of relief. His position was a big portfolio and had many odd and conflicting activities, from building complex fire trucks like we've heard about to working in committees with planning and development for driving the direction in which the fire or the city would grow, and always fighting for what the fire department needed in those complexes to make sure that the buildings were going to be built to the safest that they could be. Through all of his career, the 3 qualities of quiet confidence, resolute to action, and exceptional leadership, they served him well, and they served all of us very well. Doug had no problem in stepping up and taking on new and complex tasks as an assistant chief. He would learn the scope of what was needed to be done, and then he would go and get it done, and he'd do it very well. Finally, as we heard, he had a way about him that would keep our most darkest hours light, with a very quiet, very wry sense of humor. He knew all it would take is a small comment or a small quip to all of us in administration, Sabrina, Diane, Jackie, Michael, Timo, Brian, and James, and I, and as well as all of the rest of the members of the Maple Ridge Fire Department, appreciated immensely. This last while has been one of our darkest hours. And I miss his sense of humor. To you, I know Doug was away a lot of the time. On calls, meetings, training, and other demands of the job, especially as an assistant chief. We monopolized his time. And therefore, Danica, Cade, and Travis, on behalf of the City of Maple Ridge Fire Department and the City of Maple Ridge, I thank you for sharing Doug with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Doug preceded me in the fire department. I came along in 2003 with Boo as the new fire chaplain. He'd already been there for a couple years. And I could see that Doug had already established himself as a very capable, reliable firefighter. I got to know Doug during my recruit training and then Monday night practices over the years. And one of the things I remember there is on more than one occasion, Doug was on the receiving end of some good humor from then training officer Chief Exner, in part because when Doug was singled out in a room, he would turn a nice bright red, much to the enjoyment of everybody that was there. Doug was able to laugh at himself, a good-natured guy, and I think over the years also became very skilled with his own barbs and jabs towards others. Quick and clever wit, as we've heard. In time, as I got to know Doug better, he sort of became a guy that I would seek out. I'm not here a lot, but he was a guy that I would go, his door was always open, and if I wanted to find out what was new or what had been going on lately, Doug was one of the guys. I'd watched him as he began his rise through the ranks, very well respected, well spoken. He took his training seriously, but he loved to have a good laugh and joke around as well. He always seemed to make you feel that he had all the time in the world to listen to you, never made you feel like he was in a rush. And when I came by, it seemed his door was open. He would give you a sarcastic comment and greeting and then invite you in. Over the past few weeks, I realized that there was perhaps one side of Doug that I misunderstood or never really knew so very well, and then there's another side of him that I've found to be exactly as I thought it was. Doug always struck me as a pretty casual guy, laid back, pretty chilled, took things as they came, never too animated, didn't seem to let things bother him all that much. But what I failed to realize to some degree was just how determined and focused he could be. I learned about his black belt. He ran a marathon. Let's face it, you don't picture Doug as a runner, do you? But less than 4 hours, I'd take that time. And here around trucks and training, attending countless calls, he was a constant and a consummate professional. Gifted is the one who can rise, achieve, and accomplish, and kind of make it look easy. And that was Doug. That's the professional Doug. Thorough, efficient, safe, dedicated, focused. When you leave today, there's a truck parked just outside here. In large part, it's here because of Doug's efforts. But there's another side of Doug that nobody who knew him missed, and that's the personal Doug. This was a man who loved his family, dedicated husband, proud father. And Doug always struck me as someone whose favorite place and people to be with were his family. You knew he had two loves, but you knew the order in which those two loves came. Family first, fire department second. And I can remember on more than one occasion having conversations with Doug where you knew he wanted to do the very best he could here, but not at the expense of not being able to give the best of himself at home either. And he probably didn't always get that right, but I know he wanted to. I think one of the biggest compliments about Doug's two passions were from the lips of Danica, who said to me, "We shared Doug with the fire department." And Danica and boys and extended family, I know that the Maple Ridge Fire Department feels extremely grateful and honored that you would share Doug with them again today. Your son, your husband, your dad was a man who was dearly loved, greatly respected, and one who will be deeply missed. Gone, but not forgotten. So today would be a perfect day to go for a cruise in a Mustang, wouldn't it? Beautiful, warm, sunny day. But my guess is that if Doug was still here, he probably wouldn't be driving his Mustang, because he'd be busy doing something for someone else. At home with Danica and the boys, helping his mom, or here at the hall helping in some way yet again. And those are all things that he can no longer do. But we can. And that's the challenge that I believe, one of the challenges that his life passes to us. To remember his family in the days ahead, to support, love, and encourage them in any way possible, as in fact you've been doing. To serve and protect this community, never forgetting the example and dedication of one of its very best firefighters. So we've had lots of people talk, and we're going to watch a slide presentation that Chris McKee has put together now, and this is your opportunity to reflect, to watch, to cry, to laugh, to remember, as we see Doug there on the screen.
Put your hands on there.
All right, off you go. I'm right behind you.
Firefighter's prayer is as follows. When I am called to duty, God, wherever flames may rage, give me strength to save a life, whatever be its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it is too late, or save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert to hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give the best in me to guard my neighbor and protect his property. And if according to your will I have to lose my life, bless with your protecting hand my children and my wife. The tolling of the bell is a firefighter tradition that dates back over 150 years. Long before the use of telephones, radios, computers, or pagers, fire departments used the telegraph to communicate, using special codes to receive fire alarms. When a firefighter was killed, or in the language of the military and public safety, when they fell in the line of duty, the fire alarm office would tap out a special signal. This would be tapped out as 5 measured dashes, then a pause, then 5 measured dashes, then a pause, then 5 more measured dashes, and so on for a total of 5 times. This came to be called the tolling of the bell and was broadcast over the telegraph fire alarm circuits to all fire halls in the vicinity. Heard outside on the streets with the fire department's windows open, the resonating echo was similar to that of fire halls of old, where fire alarm gongs sounded the locations of thousands of emergencies throughout the history of our country. This was done for the purpose of notification and as a sign of honor and respect for all firefighters who had made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their communities. Such symbolism has been a time-honored fire service tradition, and to this day is repeated at each service of a fallen firefighter. Today, when the bell is sounded, it will be done to honor the life of Doug Armour. Bugler last post. want to thank you for coming today. I know today hasn't been an easy day, but appreciate your presence here, as I know does the family. As we leave here today, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. As we dismiss, I'm going to ask all uniformed members to commence a march pass. If you would please line in single file in the center aisle, march to the casket, salute, bow, turn to my right, and exit to the back. And then I will dismiss the family and the rest of you to follow.